These are the absolute make or break levels for Bitcoin right now, just hours before tomorrow's massive economic events could send the price flying or crashing. What is up everyone, and welcome back to Bitcoin Easy.io, your daily source for straight to the point crypto TA. Today our entire focus is on Bitcoin because it is at a critical crossroads. We're going to break down the levels that could trigger a massive move to new all-time highs or a painful drop back down. The reason for this laser focus is simple. Tomorrow we have the FOMC minutes and the tariffs deadline hitting back to back, which is a perfect recipe for insane volatility. Now, as you might have noticed, I took a bit of a breather from full video yesterday, but I did keep you guys updated with the key fundamental news over on TikTok. So I hope you caught that. And if you want to make sure you never miss these critical updates, do yourself a favor and follow me over there. And while you're at it, guys, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell right now. Right guys, so we're doing a top-down analysis here starting on the weekly chart after, of course, we couldn't get back into the weekly close yesterday since I didn't post a video. But yeah guys, we can see that we minimally here crossed the pivot point, right? We actually printed a new all-time high here on a closing basis. And by that, we have now also confirmed that structure point here. So what we last spoke about here on the channel was that we want to break the prior highs here on a weekly closing basis to confirm here a higher high and then a higher low as well. Of course, this here an extremely unsustainable structure with really no structure points until the point here where we printed the last overall all-time high here just below $112,000. So we were looking for a key structure point here and to confirm that we wanted to break the prior highs, which we did now. So that's very good, but of course we want to confirm that, so we need to follow up with another candle here. And this hammer above resistance, of course, also bullish candlestick pattern, but not on its own. We always want to have a follow-up candle there to confirm the pattern. And therefore, we want to see another bullish candle here. But then, of course, if we get big volatility to the upside this week, we don't want to wait for the weekly close here to enter a long position. And therefore, we still know where our key levels are that we want to break on the smaller time frames that I will get into in a second. So if we now get some really negative news and the outcomes from tomorrow events are ugly, then of course we can expect a big drop here. And then we have our pivot point right here, just below $101,000, right? Weekly closes below there make it very clear that we're going down here to our weekly support level in the range of $90,000 to $88,000. Our bias is still that we're going down there before we're continuing up to new all-time highs sometime in Q4 2025. And we've been talking about this for a long time here on the channel. And the recent market situation and the geopolitical situation, the macroeconomics really don't give us that much hope for Bitcoin to start pumping massively right now, because everything looked very hawkish, right? So if it turns out more dovish tomorrow, if we get some good news about the tariffs, if we get some good news about the future for the interest rates in the US, then of course this could now continue straight up here and we could continue up to our targets in the $118,000 to $120,000 range. But that remains to be seen, and for that we need to keep our eyes open on the smaller time frames to get the early confirmation there to be able here to pivot and to enter a long position. That's what we're doing right now. We go down here into the 3-day chart that's wrapping up tonight, and there we see that we're right here dancing around at the line in the sand as well. We can see here from the candlestick perspective right now. Of course, now if we continue closing below the prior candle open here, then we would confirm this here basically as a shooting star pattern at the top. It's not the clearest one, but it's also in combination with very strong resistance here from a horizontal perspective as we're trying to break out here as well. You can see we have the exact same setup here actually. We see the prior high here in this downtrend, right? Where we're printing lower highs here very clearly. And now what we need to do to confirm here that we're continuing upwards from here is to get a clear breakout. And there we also formed a hammer above resistance here, above the prior high on a closing basis, but immediately followed up with another candle closing straight below there again. So that's what I was talking about. When we put in a candlestick pattern, we also want to follow that up with another bullish candle in this case to confirm that pattern here, so that we then get confirmation that we're continuing upwards here in this trend. You can see the resistance of this trend here, depending on where we hit it, is somewhere in the $130,000 to $150,000 range. And that could really clearly here mark also our cycle tops. That also has something to do with the monthly chart here, how high we can go, and I will get back into that in a future video here if you're interested about it, how we identified that the cycle top from that perspective could potentially be in. Then make sure to check out that video up there right now. Same thing here. So if we don't break this now and then here break this current low here on a closing basis, then very likely that we revisit the current lows here. And then of course that's likely provoked here by a very bearish outcome from tomorrow's events. And then we can expect to go down to the same area that we just saw here on the weekly chart, where there we saw that we have the 50-week SMA in the area. Here we have the 100 3-day SMA right there in the area as well. So massive support here, as we know, somewhere in the $90,000 to $88,000 range. Right, guys, and now over to the daily chart. Here we're still looking at that same setup that we have been looking at here for the last couple of weeks. We're still trying to break that previous pivot point. Here we haven't actually gotten close yet. The 3-day and the weekly chart were way ahead of us here on the daily chart, right? They already broke the prior high in that lower high structure, and here we're still struggling right at that point. And that's actually the pivot point that I've been talking about all along here. That is the key level that we want to close above and confirm above here on a daily closing basis here to really get clear confirmation that we headed upwards. And there we also took the measurement here of this flag, and that also pointed in the $118,000 to $120,000 range for our next real resistance to come in, and that aligned perfectly with our targets from the Fibonacci extensions as well. So very clear here, the same thing still. We're still looking for breakout here on a horizontal perspective. Of course, now we're trying to hold here the 21 EMA, and if that breaks down, then we can see here the pivot point in this local higher low structure, right? There we have here the pivot point right at 105,600 or 700 bucks. And there we also have perfect alignment with the 50-day EMA here. Of course, a key moving average, massive support in that area. And then just below there, if that, of course, doesn't hold us up here, which is likely if we get a strong rejection here now, then we come back down here to the trend support, where we, of course, here been printing lower lows. And there we see that we have the trend line. Just below there, we have the 38.2 and the 200-day EMA here. So in the range between 96,000 and 100K, we have massive support. And if we don't find a bounce somewhere there, then it's very likely that we get down to our weekly support level. But really, guys, if this trend line here breaks down and we start closing below there, right below $100,000, then it's very likely that we go down to that weekly support level. That's clearly visible here as well. Right, guys, and now to the 4-hourly chart. Is of course here the time frame that you want to look at to catch things real early. And you can see how beautiful the reaction here was of our pivot point, where we said that this is really the key point that we want to hold above here, especially on a closing basis, to get a shot here again at the weekly supply or resistance area. You can see right up here. And we bounced straight off that. We're here back above the previous resistance line here as well from that downsloping trend, basically the same pattern that we're looking at on the daily chart. We're just above that now, and now challenging right here with this 4-hourly candle right now, this key pivot point here that of course we want to reclaim as support. We failed to do so here with this previous lower high. We're still managing to hold the line here, so that is still the key pivot point here right at 107,500 bucks. 4-hourly closes below there give us a clear move here at least to the 200 EMA here as well, which of course is always massive support. And now we adjust here also the Fibonacci retracement, and there we see that that line in the sand here, that pivot point also lines up perfectly with the 23.6. Of course, if we lose that, likely that we come down to the 200, which is here in that horizontal level in alignment as well with the 38.2. And yeah, guys, these are really the lines in the sand here, that range here between $108,000 and $106,000. Anything below there here, also on a 4-hourly closing basis, gives us really early indication that we're going down here to that trend support in the $100,000 to $98,000 range. And then if we see daily closes below that $100,000 level, then of course very likely that we go down to the weekly support area. To the upside, of course, the first task here is to reclaim that pivot point here as support, and then we want to break the prior high here, which is right at 109,400 bucks. 4-hourly closes above there. Give us another shot here at the weekly supply and resistance area here in the $110,000 to $111,000 range. And then if we start closing within that range, and then that drifts over into the daily chart, then of course, then we also break the pivot point of 110,300 bucks on that daily chart. And then we're set here for a massive breakout on the larger time frames. That could then send us up to $118,000 and $120,000. All right, that's a wrap. You now have the key support and resistance levels for Bitcoin heading into the storm. Be ready for anything, because the market sure will be. And you will not want to miss tomorrow's video. We'll be covering Bitcoin and our top 5 altcoins to see how they're reacting in real time on a day where we expect massive news. For instant chart updates and analysis, as the news drops, make sure you're following me on X. And for your daily fundamental news that gets you smart in under 90 seconds, check out my Instagram and TikTok. If this video helped you, please smash that like button for me. And of course, please remember that this is not financial advice and you should always do your own research. Now I'm out of here, guys. And as always, happy trading and see you soon.